Quick, look at this tweet. Describe it to me. What are 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear? Okay, enough with the grounding exercises. The first thing that I noticed is that, yeah, this year we were spoiled in gay depictions in popular TV shows and movies, which we love to see, but also in a close tie to the first things that I noticed was how palm-colored these depictions of gay love are. And don't get me wrong, I definitely did see some ethnically ambiguous and brown boys in the mix, but that seems to be more of a variable, while whiteness seems to be more of the constant. In scientific terms, there is, dare I say, always a white person as a part of the equation in these queer couple representations. Hey guys, what's up? It's Imurgency and welcome back to my channel. And in the past few years, we have seen a stark rise in gay media, particularly in TV shows, but also sprinkled throughout movies here and there. And of course, this should be something that is celebrated because this is an amazing thing. We love to see representation and the expansion of representation in our mainstream media because as we talk about so much on this channel, representation matters, but also the type of representation also matters. So while these strides should 100% be celebrated, they are not also above critique. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the state of queer media in the current modern landscape to not only see the growth over the years, but also to see what needs paying attention to. Now, you know, I'm all about pushing that needle forward, whether that be in media representation, public policy, or just general progress. But in the conversation around queer representation in media, it is important to dissect who this needle is being moved for. And I feel like it's a very common experience for people of color, and especially queer people of color, to see media representation of queer storylines, but not seeing ourselves or people that look like us represented in any meaningful way in these storylines and narratives. Kind of giving us this feeling of like partial satisfaction. Like, yes, one part of our identity is feeling seen and represented right now, but the other, arguably more important and arguably more culturally or at least physically more present identity is kind of cast to the wayside because intersectionality exists and those intersectional identities create their own separate problems or at least separate experiences than those that don't share them. And it seems like to the higher ups, having intersectional identities is too niche. Like you can either be a person of color or you can be gay. Pick one. Not both. And yes, I know in one of the more recent and trending examples of queer representation that we've gotten in media, that being the show Heated Rivalry, within the first 5 minutes, the show brings up Shane Hollander's Asian identity, and then they kind of skate past it a few times, pun intended, but it's not so much of a focal point, which of course it doesn't have to be, but those lines that were included seemed a little, como se dice, built in, which does kind of speak to another conversation, which could be an entirely different video and very likely out of my scope to make a full video about. So like if any other creators are watching and want to like take the lead on this one, there is a conversation to be woken up around how a lot of modern popular shows almost exclusively feature a white and Asian or a white and Asian couple pairing. I'm thinking The Summer I Turned Pretty, Heated Rivalry, Invincible. But moving on, this whole conversation around representation in queer media is not just speculation. According to the 2024 to 2025 GLAAD Where We Are on TV report, gay media has seen growth in 2025, but only in specific areas. Overall, across primetime scripted broadcast, primetime scripted cable, and scripted streaming original series that premiered in a new season between June 1st, 2021 and May 31st, 2025, GLAAD counted 489 LGBTQ regular or recurring characters in total. This is a 4% increase in 21 additional characters from the 468 characters counted in the previous edition. Additionally, while these are decent numbers, it does not supersede the current record-holding report, which is from 2021 to 2022. Like, yes, peak woke, let's bring woke back, please. But unfortunately, an estimate of 200 of the 489 characters in 2025, which is 41% by the way, are going to be nuked due to the series endings or series cancellations. But looking big picture, I guess we could still say this is kind of a slay. Like, yes, increase in LGBTQ plus representation. Yes, love to see it. But of course, with everything, it's also important to have an intersectional lens when viewing that. So let's get a little bit more specific with it. According to the study, of the 489 LGBTQ characters counted across all platforms, 85 or 17% were Black. And this is a decline of 10 characters and 2 percentage points. And this downward trend continues for Latina characters, with the study stating, yet Latina LGBTQ characters are severely underrepresented in television this year, a concerning ongoing pattern. Of the 489 LGBTQ characters counted in this season, 53 or 11% were Latina. Though this is an increase of 13 characters and 1 percentage point, it falls far behind reality. And as for Indigenous LGBTQ plus characters, baby, just vote. There were only 8 total characters on streaming platforms, with both shows that contain them currently pending renewal. And there were no LGBTQ Indigenous characters counted on scripted primetime broadcasts or cable programming. So yeah, not looking great. And again, a win is a win in terms of more queer representation on screen, but it is important to be aware of what kind of representation we are all seeing. Intersectional identities exist, and to me, it's kind of wild that that still isn't being represented on screen. And you know, of course, there is a whole section of the population, not y'all, Y'all are great. Y'all are perfect. That genuinely want to complain about seeing so many gay relationships on screen, which brings me to my next point around the conversation of like forcing the gays in TV. You know, like the tried and true argument that they're trying to indoctrinate the children or force the gay agenda onto the masses, with the gay agenda just being like, you know, love who you love. And what really inspired me to talk about this specifically for this video was a certain video that came across my For You page, and I don't want to give the original video any more attention, so I'm going to plug the Stitch version here.
Guys, no shade, no tea, but why do we have to have LGBTQ plus representation in all of the shows? Like,
Now I'm going to show you, a woman of color, how moronically ignorant you sound. Guys, no shade, no tea, but why do we have to have black people represented in all of our shows?
On you, every single news show that I watch, they have to throw in a random gay couple. They have to throw in a random trans person.
Like I'm telling you, every single new show has to throw in a random black or brown person.
I just don't get it. I understand there's gay people among us and there's trans people among us. Not everybody wants that in their shows. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know y'all are there, but y'all are trying to normalize it by putting it in our shows.
I understand that there are people of color among us, but not everyone wants them in our shows. We know y'all are there, but you're just trying to normalize it by putting them in our shows. All of that sounds pretty awful, doesn't it? Well, it's exactly the type of things that white people said about seeing black and brown people in TV shows and movies not that long ago. If it wasn't for representation of black people being shown in TV, we would never have groundbreaking shows like The Jeffersons, Good Times, or even shows like Julia, where there was a female lead, Miss Diane Carroll, who was a black woman. It's so disappointing to see someone from a marginalized community do the same thing that has been done to them to others. And let's take it a step further. The same thing happened to schools. They didn't want black kids to go to school with white kids because it wasn't normal. But guess what? The LGBTQ community is normal just as people of color are normal. And everybody deserves representation.
And while I must admit this might be rage bait, consider me falling for the bait. Calling me baited, because what the hell are we talking about? What is going on? Like, no shade, but this is all kind of going back to my original video talking about like the DL man epidemic. Y'all kind of proving me right. I'm sorry. And after a casual scroll through of this creator's page, it just seems like she's giving that, you know, homophobic MAGA vibe. But that specifically is only like an extreme viewpoint of the general conversation that I've seen around forced diversity in TV shows, where some people supporting arguments that I'm absolutely hitting on are like, whose school actually looks like this? Or like, whose friend group actually looks like that? Because y'all are telling on yourselves. Bad. Like, of course, not every single person has every drop of the rainbow in their friend group, but you know, like, schools ain't segregated no more. People do have friends from different backgrounds. Talk to any college freshman in their first semester. They're gonna be talking to and making friends with people they have never talked to or made friends with before, okay? And aside from that kind of conversation reminds me a bit of something that we mentioned in the DL video. And the main thing I will give merit to, which this original video wasn't saying at all, is that we can critique the kind of queer media that we're getting. I don't think that this is a forced diversity problem. I just think we need equal and equitable diversity behind the camera and in the writer's room. Because for some queer stories, whether they're the main plot focus or not, often do revolve around trauma and or coming out, and sometimes become almost caricatures of real life experiences. Like, god damn, can we please get some queer joy in the room with us? Now, not all stories are like this, and no, they don't need to negate the reality of being gay and the hardships that come with it. But in my opinion, this is a very similar conversation to the ones we have in the Black community around our representation, and how for the longest time, even now low-key, most Black representation in media consisted of trauma storylines. It was either slavery, the hood, police brutality, or a broke baby daddy in pregnancy. Like, that was the summation of Black representation in media, and it hasn't been until recently that we've broken out of that and seen the explosion of Black joy, or just general Black exceptionalism, the softness, innocence, and safety behind Black love. Like, these things are intersectional because they are all related. Like, these all can exist together. But it seems like for a while in the media, queer stories were strictly trauma-informed narratives, as if that's the only valid way to talk about queerness as an identity. And I think we have been seeing an uptick in just like fun, romantic queer stories this year, and also in recent past years, but we must leave a door open for nuance. Like, does a joyous or fun and cringy storyline have to negate racial diversity? I'll actually answer that one for you. No! Unfortunately, however, it does introduce a profitability paradox. Apparently, intersectionality is niche. Ooh, queer stories are niche enough, and making them BIPOC and queer? Now we are asking for too much. And while studios and productions have the larger hand in this, with that being like getting to choose which projects get greenlit, it's always disappointing when their stories are deemed unprofitable, which is kind of crazy to think about, because every time one of these queer stories or queer shows or queer projects is dropped, it immediately goes #1 like They are popular. The need and demand is definitely there. But also, unfortunately, I think we do got to take a little look into our own communities here. And I know, internalized misogyny, toxic masculinity, and machismo culture will get us all. And again, we get more into this in my previous video talking about DL men. But by and large, statistically, Black and brown communities are not always the most LGBTQ friendly, especially when it comes to that G and that T. Because of misogyny and deeply ingrained patriarchal beliefs, being a BIPOC man and gay can seemingly be the worst thing you could ever be. And we see this so many times in real life, where you have these men that are actual terrible people that have a history of beating people, being misogynistic, abusing women, children, everybody, and everyone just makes excuses for them because their talent is just so unmatched and so unreal. And you can separate the art from the artist, but God forbid they lay with a man or are suspected to have laid with a man, then that goes out the window real quick. And y'all have no problem combining the art with the artist. So if that's the state of our communities, and obviously not everyone, then you have people that should be a part of the racial demographic to support these shows, intentionally not watching regardless of how good the show actually is because of their own homophobia and internal biases. And not that that's fair at all, but I can see why this in part can result in lower viewership for these stories. But also damn, can everyone else pick up the slack? Hello? And honestly, let me go off script a little bit just to rant, because I have some thoughts about this around the whole conversation around oh my God, BIPOC queer stories couldn't sell, no one wants to watch them. I think the sheer fact that we have not gotten nearly any representation where it is two queer people of color having a love story, that the demand and anticipation is there and is actively building. We just need the first show to do it, because these conversations are ongoing, and you can look on social media and just look at the numbers done on content talking about this to see that the demand is there. We just need someone in the industry to take the chance to make it and to make it good. Don't just hear damn us a BIPOC queer love story. Be intentional about it, have the budget behind it, and it will do numbers because people are itching for it, regardless of if they share those identities or not, because we just do not see that often. That would be groundbreaking. But I digress. We've talked a lot about the gays. Let's talk about another issue in representation, specifically to do with what I like to call as the sideplot sapphics, because we also have to consider the girls and gays, but what about the girls that are the gays? I'm talking about sapphic representation in TV. And while yes, they exist in the context of the aforementioned shows as side characters or side plots, why not have more whole shows giving that same feeling and attention to a Willa couple? And then when I say this, I harken back to my previous point. A really good, intentionally written and well-written story given to a Willa couple. Because we've gotten some in the past, and again, this harkens back to my previous point, that have come out and have done numbers, debuted #1 or have risen to #1 on the Netflix charts, on whatever streaming charts, but still end up getting canceled, not renewed, whatever, what have you. I'm looking at You, First Kill, and Warrior Nun. This isn't to say that lesbian shows don't exist at all, but why is it literally just the mess, the L word, or Feel Good, which is amazing in its own right, but it's definitely not a cutesy, lighthearted watch. We want lowbrow WLW rom-com-esque media. And now no one opened their mouths to fix it to say happiest season, because one, that was a movie, and two, trauma was at the forefront, okay? What happened to fun? What happened to whimsy? What happened to low stakes? What happened to no one giving a gaff? Would anyone really be mad if the gay girls got to experience queer joy? And I know the answer to that is yes, which is why, again, they ended up nuking First Kill. But shows with sideplot sapphics or queer romance that aren't necessarily at the forefront of the show, things like Ginny and Georgia, Sex Lives with College Girls, etc., and overcompensating are definitely important to the normalization of these relationships, but it seems that that's the only representation that the girls get. What's the popular lesbian version of Heartstopper on a major network or streaming platform? Right. And of course, the small moments that we do get are tucked into these other main plot points. Or also love to follow the scientific formula of gay shows having at least one white person as the constant variable or constant love interest. Or they love to tease the subtextual queerness between characters. Never confirming it for real, but just giving the audience a little tease. There are so many shows that are considered queer media, and the media in question is all subtext. Guys, if they aren't kissing or holding hands or even stealing glances, then what the hell are we talking about? Guys, put it to the test. Yellow Jackets, Warrior Nun, Euphoria, Sex Lives with College Girls, Heartbreak High, Ginny and Georgia, Gen V, hell, even I Love LA. It's almost as if we always got to exist in the context of white proximity to make our equal sin of being BIPOC and queer okay. Yes, that's as crazy as it sounds. And getting back to the whole profitability paradox, there does still seem to be a demand from Mulama shows from women as well. It's not just the gays that are watching, because a lot of the viewership of these gay shows are from women. Just look at the discourse around Heated Rivalry. But this does transition us into the next conversation around desirability in MLM gay shows. To put it simply, straight women love okay? There is a reason why the BL or MLM fandom relationships are so popular. Women, particularly straight women, love it. And I do think there are layers to this phenomenon, but there are at least 2 or 3-ish components of this. Number 1 being that there is something about women seeing men be vulnerable and loving. And I empathize with y'all because straight women don't get enough of that. And I mean, seriously, where both partners in question start off as equals and generally removes partner gender-based violence that is all so common in hetero relationships, both in real life and on screen. And this TikTok explains this so well if you're interested in hearing more in that.
When it comes to something like Heated Rivalry, I think the most obvious answer is something akin to like how lesbian porn is a really, really popular industry for straight men. If you're a woman and you're attracted to men, it's so reasonable that you would find it interesting to watch men make out with each other. But my other hypothesis is this. Straight women in the world that we live in are generally conditioned to accept relationships that are not egalitarian. Historically, women as a social class have had less rights than men, have been perceived as less strong or smart or capable than men, and overall have just been viewed as different, right? We live in a patriarchy, a lot of weird bioessentialist views kind of tied into what everybody grows up with. So even in like the healthiest, kindest heterosexual relationship, there is a lot of like cultural programming that you have to unlearn in order to work towards a really equal relationship, to work towards being on equal footing with your partner. So I hypothesize that for a lot of women, like watching gay men in a romance is a way of like projecting and enjoying a relationship with like somebody that they would be attracted to, where like they could really be on equal footing from the start. Equality is presupposed, where you are already assuming that the two of you are on equal footing.
And 2, these characters and stories are just generally better written than their sister counterparts. And I really hate to say that, but let's look at 2 Netflix projects. You have the writing and quality of Young Royals, and then you have the writing and quality of First Kill. Young Royals came out roughly a year before First Kill and got greenlit for 3 whole seasons before the show reached its natural conclusion where the creator wanted to end it. And First Kill did crazy numbers, but got killed after its first season. And there's a joke in there somewhere, I just know it. And while the premise of First Kill should have made it a success, it was a bit corny.
Netflix had it plastered on the main page. You knew people were watching it. And people were like, oh, well, it's cringy, so, like, why can't we get... Listen, there's 1,000,001 cringy straight movies. You're telling me Twilight's not a little cringe? Yeah, it is a little bit. Yeah, it is a little bit, sorry. Cringe never stops something from being entertaining. I sat down, I watched First Kill, I was entertained. Are you not entertained? Yes, it was clear the budget was $2 in a paperclip. However, what's wrong with a show that's a little cheesy? Like, straight people can have 1,000,001 cheesy shows, but the gay people can't have a little cheese. We can't have a little cheese. Like,
both in its effects and storyline. And having better writing and special effects would have done a world of a difference, but viewership didn't follow to the end of the season apparently. But also on the other hand, when has cringy but entertaining media ever stopped people from watching anything? Like, what vampire media hasn't been at least a little bit cringy? Like, come on, let's be real. I think the show being canceled was tough because it was fun and had a main black lesbian character. Though, of course, her love interest was white. But it's like no one wants to be entertained and see some originality in storytelling anymore, even if it is a little bit corny. Like, when did y'all become the corny police? Like, come on. And I'm not saying that we have to sit through bad representation when it's given to us, but like, come on. I know I watched every last episode of that BS because I want more stories and because it was entertaining. Not that we should have to do that to continue to get representation, but like, that's where we are with this. And honestly, a tertiary point I wanted to add to the first 2, or maybe this kind of goes with the first point, is that the aforementioned gay love stories portrayed have a certain formula aside from the constant variable of one white male lead. There does seem to be the trend of a taller, lankier, maybe nerdier guy matched with a hyper-masculine guy, or in some cases get a double whammy where both are hyper-masculine, really pushing the whole mask for mask agenda. But what we generally never see in both scenarios is a more feminine male lead. And for this, I would love to bring Chudi Gatwa to the stand. He was such an icon on Sex Education, and his more feminine style and makeup looks were not only a staple to his character, but it seemed like at that time the actor himself would also wear a similar style. And it wasn't until after Sex Education and he began to get more mainstream roles like the Doctor in Doctor Who and as a Ken in Barbie that he and his team began to tone it down. It's almost as if being a feminine black gay man was too unpalatable for mainstream audiences. And the only way to be a gay man, especially if you're a person of color, is to be hot in trade or at least straight passing or looking for the whole fantasy. And a white example of this who women just love to lust over is Jonathan Bailey, with many people either not knowing that he's gay or just forgetting the fact that he's gay. But the ladies love him in his prince-like face. Like, being hot and straight passing seems to be the only acceptable way to be a liked gay man represented in television, which sucks. And since we're getting real, let's get a little bit realer and talk about the recent merger that's been going on in media, specifically in the streaming world, and what that means for the future of queer entertainment.
Netflix has just made an $82 billion deal to merge with Warner Brothers Discovery. If this doesn't concern you, it should. This is a gigantic deal, and it contributes to the entertainment industry being monopolized. The Writers Guild of America directly opposed this deal, saying that it must be blocked. There's a really good Deadline article about the merger, and specifically about what the Writers Guild of America had to say about it. But in short, this monopolization of entertainment and media will lead to less diverse content and probably also less things in theaters.
Now, if you keep a pulse on what's been happening in the world of entertainment, you may have heard the recent deal of Netflix buying Warner Brothers, and in early fall, Skydance Media completed its merger, or buying out, of Paramount Pictures. This news, which is a little bit old at this point, has caused havoc in the entertainment world, leaving the future of it even more on the ropes, with many saying that it could be the collapse of entertainment as we know it. I mean, the Writers Guild itself said that the deal must be blocked, and absolutely was not. The reason why this is a little bit concerning is that the monopolization of media and entertainment will have serious repercussions as to what we see on our screens. Now, putting this in context with the evergreen conversation about IP and why there's so many reboots and remakes and not so many original stories right now, as well as the whole conversation around us being tired about seeing the same faces in Hollywood all the time, all of these things are red yarned by the same idea. Why is Disney live action adapting every single one of their films? Why is Timothée Chalamet and Pedro Pascal in everything? Well, shocker, it's because of money. What's a surefire way to get butts in movie theater seats? Showing stories that people already know and love with actors they already know and love. And this isn't to say that originality hasn't paid off time and time again. I mean, just look at some of the Oscar nominations for 2026. Like, you have Sinners, which was a huge hit this year. You have films like Bugonia, which both had very popular and famous talent, but also a lot of new talent as well. So if this was already the direction Hollywood was heading before this insane merger, and we already know that Netflix only really cares about Netflix's profitability and bottom dollar, where do artful or even just fun and cringy original stories about queer people land in all of this? Like, this is all just speculation, but it feels like diversity in media is going to become even more challenging, at least in the mainstream. And not to get super political, but if we follow the money and we follow the people behind the money, it is already clear that those in charge of the companies behind the merger and those in power right now being super aligned with this country's administration, the future representation is looking a little spooky. And if storytelling, quality, and care are not what matters in TV and film, I'm just sad to think about all of the shows that we could have had. And I really hate to leave with a non-resolution for real, but as media consumers and scrollers, and I know I say this a lot, our attention is our power, and how we decide to use it is important. And I know saying to boot up your Vimeo or to watch independently produced web series isn't enough, and honestly, it sucks that that is the extent to our representation that we actually want. I mean, unless that's already your bag, and in that case, keep going. But we do have to invest our attention to the things that we want to see. Then rest in peace those 200 queer characters that got canceled or just got no renewal this year. Studios and networks greenlight things that would bring in audience viewership and that are profitable. So to show you care, show love to the stories that are out there. And this obviously isn't a big call to action, but it is something, my friends. Like, invest your attention to stories you want to be told. And like, girl, make a fan cam, I don't know. But what I do know is that we are still seeing progress in queer media, and that we still have a long ways to go to get intersectional and diverse representation on our screens.